Yes, it is true. Stained has just come back with their first album in 12 years. That is like a tool gap between albums. But finally, I didn't even think this was going to happen. I thought Stained was done. After their self-titled album back in 2011, it seemed like they hit a high point creatively. The lyrics were so dark that Aaron Lewis had a hard time reopening those wounds. They were closed shut for good. He launched his solo career. Mike Mashuk joined Saint Asonia, and Stained could have just ended. However, they started sprinkling in a few festival dates, then a few shows here and there, and lo and behold, we have a new Stained album. This is their 7th studio album, 8th if you include their demo. I am thrilled about this. I'm not gonna lie, I am a huge Stained fan, so in some ways I'm fanboying, and in other ways I'm also pretty critical of one of my favorite bands from the nu metal post-grunge era. As always in the album song rank and review series, first I will rank the songs from least strong to strongest, then I will give the album an overall review and score. So here we go. So starting things off at number 10 is Was Any of It Real? Now first of all, I'm excited because this is a 10-song album that doesn't have any interludes. No interludes, no intro track. Most of the album song ranks I've done lately have had those, and usually those are at the bottom. But no, we have 10 full songs, and Was Any of It Real falls at the bottom. It's surprising because it is the second track on the album. Usually albums are front-loaded with some of the good stuff. Was Any of It Real is a fine song. It actually starts with a 9 Inch Nails kind of Deftones vibe. Mike Mashuk had said in an interview that he wanted Stained sound to become more modern, which kind of scared me a little. Then he mentioned that he wanted there to be more electronic elements in Stained sound, and that scared the shit out of me. Stained mixed with electronics, like what are you really going to get there? And in this album, sometimes that experiment is great, but in this song specifically, it is not. The electronics are obvious right away. You have some dark, sinister keys, some drum machine beats, and it really does not feel like a Stained song. These verses are jarring. It sounds like there's electronic elements for the sake of there being electronic elements. It's not really serving the song. Despite all the weirdness in the beginning, the chorus itself is huge. It has a great hook. You have distorted guitars that are back in play, but the song itself feels very disjointed. It feels like electronic verse, then vintage Stained chorus. Electronic verse, vintage Stained chorus. It's quite disjointed. It does not flow very well. And in my opinion, it isn't as fully fledged as it could have been. I will admit that this one has grown on me, and the more I listen to the electronic aspects of it, it does remind me of a modern take on nu metal. Now, there was a huge opportunity missed. This song, if it had some kind of cool breakdown or something that really went crazy, I think Was Any of It Real could have been a top 5 song. However, we don't get that. It is literally verse, chorus, outro, done. So for those reasons, it has fallen at the bottom. But it is still an enjoyable song, and I think it's worth checking out. Next at number 9 is The Fray, and I really enjoy this song. It is a mid-tempo, down-tuned, kind of sludgy, brooding song that you feel like you're in typical Stained territory until you get to the verses that are actually really creatively done. This is an example of the electronic elements actually working well. Aaron Lewis does something that he usually doesn't do with his vocal delivery. He uses more pauses in the syllables of the verse and uses repetition for effect. I'm cold, so cold, and does that repetition, and it adds to this really cool kind of boom, 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 boom rhythm that's going on. In that way, it makes The Fray unpredictable. When I heard the intro, I was like, okay, I know exactly what I'm in for. Then when the verse comes in, it really shakes things up. There's no doubt that this one is a downer of a song. Aaron Lewis sings about feeling comfort in the fray. The chorus itself is very melodic, very catchy, but it also is it weighs on you. It's heavy in that regard where you feel all of the stress and tension in the song. The chorus might fall flat compared to other ones in Confessions of the Fallen. However, I love that at the end of the chorus, Aaron Lewis just decides to growl the last line. He throws these in so much in this album, and it's so welcomed. His voice has gotten even better over the last 12 years, which I don't know how. You hear him growling more in live shows, and it's cool to hear that evolution for him as a vocalist translates in this album. It makes it feel much more modern, especially if you've seen Stained in the last decade. Ranked at number 8 is Better Days. This is one of 2 ballads on the album. The ballads are very, very different from each other, so I'm not going to talk about the other one. Better Days has this great southern acoustic driven, slightly country vibe, and it's very different from the other one because it feels a bit positive. I say a bit positive for Stained standards. This song talks about being in a rut and hoping and praying for better days. A lot of these songs are a snapshot in time where the mood is right there in those 3 to 5 minutes. Better Days is a song that actually looks forward, which to me isn't explored very often by the band. This is a quiet, more delicate ballad. It doesn't have one of those huge Stained power ballad choruses. This is much more subdued. It can definitely be performed fully acoustic without really losing any of its flair or power. In an album that is so dense with heavy, down-tuned guitars and serious subjects, Better Days helps Confessions of the Fallen breathe more. And with more empty space, the song is able to breathe, and it also enables Mike Mashuk to have some more guitar solos, specifically guitar fills between verses and choruses, and it's always welcome to hear him solo. He's great at writing riffs, but also writes killer solos that always fit the mood of the song. In Better Days, we get that. Not a ton of solos in Confessions of the Fallen, but Better Days has a few really good ones. Hate Me Too coming in at number 7. What a song title, big statement, and it immediately starts with this post-grunge, not well-produced acoustic guitar riff. Aaron Lewis starts singing the chorus, and rather than singing it in a lower register, he is belting this one at the top of his lungs. I love when singers do this. A lot of times you'll hear that intro chorus, it'll be soft, singer sings low, and then in the main chorus is when he will sing in a higher range. Instead, Aaron just wants to belt this one immediately, and it sounds awesome. And it sets up the heavy, heavy guitar riff that really reminds me of Korn. This is a Korn-esque riff that you want to mosh to. Instantly start slow headbanging. By the time we get to the verse, Aaron Lewis is practically slurring the lyrics, and it adds to a very self-loathing feeling. He does such a great job of getting in character for these songs. Even though a lot of them are autobiographical that he writes, he gets into the feeling, the emotion, the vibe of the song, and he sounds subdued. He sounds like he's not in a good place. It sounds like his head is down while he's singing. In the pre-chorus, he whispers, "Watch it burn with me," and boom, you're hit with that chorus. In a lot of these songs, these verse to pre-chorus to chorus transition are awesome. The band they're great songwriters. The only song that doesn't really have those great transitions is Was Any of It Real? Hate Me Too has a huge chorus. It is melodic but still heavy. The song itself doesn't lose momentum after the chorus. We're treated to that stomping, Korn-esque, vintage nu metal riff that keeps you in the song. It keeps you invested. You really want to know what is happening next. Aaron Lewis is telling someone that if they hate them, he understands because he'd probably hate himself too. It's a dangerous sounding song, and when you get to the bridge, things kind of explode. You've got a whirling guitar riff by Mike, and you also have a lead guitar line over where it's very high-pitched, it's screeching. Aaron Lewis is growling, "Hate Me Too," holding these long notes. What an amazing song this would be live. If you haven't listened to Stained, there's no way you'd be able to tell what year this is from. This feels like it's from 2005. It is so vintage Stained, yet it's unique enough to stand at the top of some of their heaviest, best songs. "You always said that I'm better when I'm not trapped in my head." That is the opening lyric of the song Here and Now, coming in at number 6. This song took the internet by storm. The music video itself was very, very emotional. Got a great reaction from the fans. And don't get me wrong, I love this song. I think it's great. This is the other ballad on the album. So Better Days was more of a quiet ballad. It was positive. It didn't have the huge epic chorus that a lot of Stained power ballads has. Here and Now does. Here and Now has that. It has everything that I described that Better Days doesn't have. And by all means, it is a great song. It fits the Stained catalog well. Everyone's going to be singing along to it live, and I enjoyed it too. However, I still feel like it doesn't quite crack the top 5 of Confessions of the Fallen. Now, I'm not saying that it's bad to be predictable, but Here and Now is predictable. You know it from the title. It's a bit generic, yet Stained can pull it off because they come across as so genuine. It's very honest, and you feel the pain in Aaron's voice. But he's not alone. The rest of the band backs him on this one. This is a group effort. It sounds very, very tight, and the mission is very clear of this song. This is meant for nostalgia, to think back on good times compared to where we are now. Speaking of the lyrics, they are very similar to the song right here. Not in a bad way, but thematically speaking, they're quite similar. What I realized listening to this song as well as Better Days is we haven't had a Stained ballad, or really a power ballad like Here and Now, in 15 years. Their previous album in 2011 only had one ballad. That was Something to Remind You, which was a clean guitar riff the whole song. No drums, no bass, no heavy guitars, no power chords. Here and Now is the first power ballad since The Illusion of Progress. Kind of hard to believe. We've gone 15 years without a Stained power ballad. I'm not saying we needed a new one, but it is very welcomed, and I'm so glad that it came out. Finally, this song might seem cheesy to you, but I feel like it is very adult contemporary. Like, you can vibe with this if you've lived many decades or more than just one or two. This is about being through a lot of shit and getting through on the other side and always having that one person there for you. It's kind of like adult contemporary if you think of it that way, but regardless, hug someone you love, belt this chorus out. It is an anthem. Track 5 has ended up being ranked 5th overall on the album. Out of Time is probably one of my favorite Stained songs I've ever heard, and call me crazy, but this is a classic example of a song that could totally fall through the cracks if you don't listen to a full album. There's already 4 huge singles out, getting plenty of radio play, but if you don't listen to a full album, you could miss a hidden gem like Out of Time. In Out of Time, you hear the band achieving everything they wanted to. You hear the electronic elements, you hear the fresh ideas, you still hear their signature sound, but delivered in a fresh and unique way. This is one of the most unique Stained songs I have heard in probably 20 years. In my opinion, this would have been a great second or third single. I think they did a great job choosing them, but Out of Time could capture new fans. It is not a traditional Stained song. There's an extreme level of urgency in Out of Time, and that's pretty rare in a Stained song. Most of the songs encapsulate you in the vibe that they want you to be in, right? So you're stuck in that. In Out of Time, it feels like you're running. It is very frantic pace, and where that comes off the most is actually in the chorus. I've talked about how Stained has these very big, grandiose hooks in their choruses. In their choruses, they don't usually gain momentum. Usually the momentum builds and boom, you have a crescendo. In Out of Time, the chorus actually picks up the tempo of the song, something that I have never really heard in a Stained song. The verses are very contemplative and you're thinking about this situation. And then by the time you get to the pre-chorus and chorus, it's like you've realized you might be running out of time, so you start running, or your mind starts running. The musicality and the themes of these lyrics just match so well together, it makes me nerd out. It is a perfect combination of the emotions matched with the music. Now, there's another part too that I really love in the song, and it makes me think that Out of Time is just so well thought out song structure wise, and that's in the second verse. You'll hear the quiet, you got the kind of electronic beats, and instead of going right into the chorus, like from the first verse to the first chorus, instead you get hit with these big power chords, and Aaron starts singing loudly on top of it, and it is a surprise. It's a bit jarring, and it ends up being the same melody of the bridge. So just a really cool creative addition. He sings, "Is it hopeless? Too out of focus to see through the past. I challenge you to listen to this song, and if you don't have that chorus melody of na 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 stuck in your head, then I don't know what's wrong with you. Out of Time, one of my favorite Stained songs ever. In This Condition, coming in at number 4, I believe it was the third single of Confessions of the Fallen, and this one is filled with hooks. It is a hard rock, catchy song that's perfect to be released as a single. Similar to Hate Me Too, In This Condition starts with the chorus, and I really like when they do that. It's almost like smacking you over the head with the hook. They're like, this is what's going to be stuck in your head because we write melodies this well. It's really hard to not like this song, even though it does transport you back to the early 2000s, which for me isn't a bad thing, but even if you don't want to feel that nostalgic vibe, it is a great song. It's hard to sit here and say that song is crap. It's really not. It is a fantastic song. It's going to go down as one of the best hard rock singles of the year. Now, I've talked about the hooks in the chorus, but the verses of this song are everything you want in a Stained song. Things get quieter. You've got this great drum beat, kind of minimalist guitars that suddenly build up into more of like a chug. You feel the anticipation. And when you set up a song like that, you really need to write choruses that deliver. And this band is super, super confident in their own abilities to do so. And they knock it out of the park almost every time on this album. In the midst of this urgent, sad song, Aaron talks about being in this condition and what it's like. The bridge comes in and lets the song breathe a little. There's a bit of a start-stop guitar riff. In This Condition proved to me that Stained still has a ton to offer as a band. This wasn't a cash-in album because the fans wanted it. They really took the time to craft some very memorable songs such as this one. Lowest in Me is at number 3, and this was our first taste of new Stained music in over 12 years. It is the perfect first single that the band could have released. This is not an experimental song. This isn't Mike Mashuk experimenting with adding electronic elements. There are a little bit, but this is a classic Stained tune. It even opens up with a heavy guitar riff that has some harmonics in there. The lyrical themes are exactly what you would expect in a Stained song. The choruses hit hard. There's a constant build, chorus, decline, repeat, and it sounds great. I have a complaint about the production quality of this song, but I'm going to get into that when I talk about the overall album. As much as this song is a great first single, I find it weird that it is the first song on the album. Maybe they did that on purpose, or like, hey, this was the first single, it'll also kick off the album. That I do like. However, it is an interesting choice. I don't know why, I just don't feel like it sounds like an intro song. Maybe it's because I'm comparing it to Eyes Wide Open, which opened up their self-titled album 12 years ago. I don't know. As much as I've said this is Stained's return, it isn't that different. What isn't as typical is the bridge section. We have a full breakdown. Now, I mentioned this a little before, but Aaron Lewis in their recent live shows has started to growl more. I don't know how his voice keeps getting better, but it does, and he's incorporating much more growling vocals. So it's great to see that modern take on his vocal approach come to life on the first track and first single of the album. Holy Breakdowns, Batman. This breakdown is impressive even by a metal band standards. Lowest in Me fits among Stained's greatest hits. It's not necessarily crazy different, but it never had to be. Ranked second overall is the album title track and last song on the album, Confessions of the Fallen. This is a dark and brooding track. I absolutely love it. And what I love is that the electronic elements that are quite prevalent in the song fit. They actually serve the song really well. This is one of the more unique heavy Stained songs that they've released. Much more metal influences. It's dark and it's ugly. Let's break it down. It kicks off with this anxiety-inducing bass riff of like doo 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 doo. Immediately the first time I heard it, I was like, something's happening. What's disturbing about the opening verse is Aaron is singing very calm, very delicate. It isn't like the subdued kind of mumbling that he was doing in Hate Me Too. This is calm and delicate, and he's like almost whispering these things to you like it's kind of a secret or a confession. The pre-choruses are so insane heavy. They once again remind me of a Korn type riff that just erupts, and it sets you right up for the chorus where the confession happens. And it's amazing imagery. It's simple. I'm not saying that the lyrics are incredibly groundbreaking, but Aaron Lewis's ability to use metaphors that we know and use them in a way that are both dark and thought-provoking, I find really interesting. For example, we've all heard the expression of an angel on one shoulder, a devil on the other. Well, he is saying that the angel has left his shoulder and now there's a devil on both of them. What a confession. It is super dark for them, especially to close the album. It isn't a hopeful end of the album. Nope, it's not. He's got two devils on his shoulder now. Another part musically I really liked is in the second verse. Aside from the anxiety bass type riff, you get a really cool drum beat that's straight nu metal. It kind of sounds a bit hip-hoppy, but it keeps carrying the song forward, and you still feel uneasy listening to it, but it adds this extra like sass and groove to it. By the time we come to the bridge section, we're like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? We get an awesome guitar riff from Mike and a great solo. It is a chaotic, desperate, crazy solo that he performs. He's shredding all up and down the neck, and it adds to this scariness. It feels like demons hovering over you. They should use that in the music video, just saying. Aaron almost always steals the show for Stained, but it's great to hear Mike really shine in this bridge section. And finally, after all that chaos and that bombastic delivery, things get quiet. Aaron is whispering, he's confessing again, and the final chorus drops. Towards the end of the song, a great stylistic choice that the band does is, instead of rushing from final chorus to outro, there's a break and Mike is strumming along and you hear Aaron sing and it sounds like it's kind of an oh, but it sounds like a sigh. It's like this album has taken a lot out of him and he's catching his breath. Now, I said that Lois and Me might not have been the best opening song for the album. Confessions of the Fallen is the perfect album closer for that reason. Cycle of Hurting is the best ranked song on Confessions of the Fallen, in my opinion, of course. This is the single that got me really excited. It is the heavy song of the album. In my opinion, it's the heaviest. You could argue that Hate Me Too and Confessions of the Fallen were up there in heaviness, but Cycle of Hurting overall is a monster. It has a rolling guitar riff that feels like a pummeling storm. Then there's these fresh verses that have the electronic elements, but don't take away from the song at all. That is the fresh vibe that Mike and the rest of the band were going for. Cycle of Hurting pulls that off flawlessly. Now, the verses actually remind me a little bit of Mike's other project, Saint Asonia, with former 3 Days Grace singer Adam Gontier. Verses are similar to Saint Asonia's song, Better Place. It really won't remind you of it unless you're an absolute freak like me. Aaron and Mike are shining together in this song. The guitar riffs are plentiful. Aaron switches between growling vocals and clean vocals like that. It is a delightful experience. Cycle of Hurting is very invigorating, super relatable. It's dealing with life. It's the ups and downs and that constant repetition. Aaron is constantly talking about his feelings in this song and the album. It fits right into the theme of Confessions of the Fallen. He is the fallen and he's confessing all of these feelings and he doesn't know how to deal with this cycle of hurting that is his life. With such a heavy song, I was so excited for the bridge because I was like, all right, Aaron is going to go off on this one. Instead, it's Mike once again who shines with a crazy, heavy, another down-tuned riff. However, if you listen closely, you start to hear the very faint sound of Aaron holding a low guttural growl. He holds this and it gets louder and louder the entire bridge section, and it gives you chills that he comes in low and ends in high. It is fantastic. It is metal as fuck, and even better than him potentially singing or yelling something. No, just a 15-20 second long low guttural. How can I face what's under the surface when nothing is working? How can I break away from the burden, this cycle of hurting? It's not like he's saying, I love being in this cycle of hurting or this is my comfort zone. The fray was his comfort zone. In Cycle of Hurting, he's just trying to desperately find his way out. It's everything going on and these guitar riffs circling in. I actually love this line, and it's really, really simple but effective. All of my faults are all of my fault. It sounds silly when you say it like that, but it's actually kind of deep. We've got the heavy riffs. We've got some harmonics thrown in there. There's Aaron growling in the pre-chorus. This is a fantastic hard rock song, and it's going to be one of the best of the year. Confessions of the Fallen. This was an album that we weren't really waiting for. You know, there were some rumblings around, like maybe they'll do something new. I was fearing they would just like release a single with a tour. Thank goodness they did not do that, and they actually crafted a phenomenal album. This album fits right along with their discography, in spite there being a 12-year gap between albums. It sounds fresh, they sound reinvigorated, yet they still know what makes Stained Stained. Lyrically, this album is a lot. You have to be in the mood to listen to Stained. It's not a casual listen. It isn't the most uplifting, but you can rock your emotions out to this in a really good way. And in some ways, I think that is actually very therapeutic. Aaron Lewis has never sounded better. His vocals are defying time and age, and I don't know what's going on or what he is doing right, but he sounds unbelievable. Mike Mashuk on guitar sounds reinvigorated. You can tell that he and Aaron Lewis have really developed a great songwriting partnership. Not that they hadn't before. There were times that they butted heads, but now they seem to be on the same page, and it makes Confessions of the Fallen very cohesive. My biggest complaint about this album is the production. Eric Ron produced, recorded, and mixed this album, and not to knock him, but I don't understand where they went wrong, but sonically, things sound off. In my opinion, the guitars don't stand out enough. It is very bass heavy, but not bass guitar heavy. Overall, the mix is just very bassy, not a lot of treble, and sometimes it sounds muddy. It doesn't sound the way it's supposed to sound. Songs are so fresh and they're full of life, even the sad ones, yet the production keeps things very murky and low. I don't understand why that happened. That hasn't really impacted my score too much. If you buy this on vinyl and you have an amplifier, you can control the bass and the treble. I would turn the treble up a little, bass a little down, and the mix starts to make a little more sense. But overall, I have given Confessions of the Fallen an 8.6 out of 10. This is going to go down as one of the best releases of 2023. It's an excellent hard rock album. At times, it might get a little repetitive, but Stained has a style that they stick to. They throw in enough tricks in there to keep things interesting and spicy, even if you're not a Stained fan. I mentioned before that there is a use of electronics. In very few cases, it's a complete miss. That would be in, was any of it real? Other than that, the electronics, they either complement the song or they're kind of just there. I want to hear more from Stained. I still feel like they have a lot to offer. So many of these songs on their own sound so great. So as much of a monotonous experience it is getting through a full Stained album, if you throw any one of these on a playlist and press shuffle and hear it, chances are you're going to like it. It amazes me how catchy and original sounding these songs are. Production quality issues aside, Confessions of the Fallen is going to go down as one of Stained's top albums. Confessions of the Fallen dropped last week on September 22nd. I really hope you all enjoyed this. I think this album is very enjoyable for Stained fans, both old and new. If you love the nu metal post-grunge sound, you're gonna love this. If you're not crazy about it, I would still check this album out because it throws enough modern takes and production techniques to keep this one interesting and not just be a nostalgia trip. I am your friendly neighborhood metalhead, signing off. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts on Stained. Should they have even made this album? Is it good or just a nostalgia trip? See you next time.